Right, good to be with you here on the authoritative, bold and trusted bulletin in the region, Maisha. Prime News. We focus to explain rather than to state, elaborate rather than mentioning. Tonight we've got a lot lined up for you, from politics, education to what is happening in the business sector. Stay tuned as I seek to inform and also educate you on all this here on Maisha TV. But first, here are our top stories. Tonight, President Uhuru Kenyatta makes an impromptu visit to Mombasa, accompanied by Mombasa Governor-elect Abdul Somad Nasir, exciting the residents. Also tonight,
he called both of them, and he was the only person who knew who the disco would land on. It could have been either of them. It could have been William Ruto, it could have been Raila Odinga. It fell on William Ruto and he says, voila, you are the president. Is that how we intend to choose our national executive? We've reduced it to Mimi's childhood game of picky ponky pakamelo disco.
Supreme Court sits and hearing begins after the pre-trial hearing as the days gear up to the final verdict. And
observe many agents and many key players in the exercise never knew their task.
IEBC has been urged to improve on voters' civic education to avoid voter apathy in the next general elections. Alright, welcome. My name is Bushabi Jr. Now lawyer Willis Otieno Costa star at the Supreme Court when he took issue with the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati for allegedly bungling the August 9th general election. Willis tore into Chebukati for holding the country at ransom after Kenyans willingly voted for their preferred presidential candidates. Key among his arguments was that Chebukati took it upon himself as the IEBC without an affirmative consultation with the commissioners during the verification of the presidential election results at the Bomas of Kenya. While sweating profusely in the courtroom, he accused Chebukati of reducing the status of executive to the childhood mimic game, saying 14 million voters had a say to elect their national leader, but he let the machines and technology have their way. Otieno is known for his controversial child case in point when Chebukati blocked him as the Safina Party deputy presidential candidate and his then boss businessman Jimmy Wanjigi. Wanjigi said he picked Otieno as his running mate because he was a young firebrand man with a diligent profession in the legal field who represented Kenyans aged below 40.
If you look at we've attached the PSC report, Public Accounts Committee reports, again, finds an indictment of the same person sitting in meetings where he's conflicted. Look at the KPMG report. The auditors are saying they are being given even the information requested so late in the day, on the 16th of June, for a register to be gazetted on the 20th of June. This was deliberate attempt to make sure that the election is compromised. Section 6 of the Elections Act required the register to be opened for inspection 90 days before the date, the notice of a general election. The notice came out on the 20th of January. The register ought to have been open 90 days before the 20th of January for inspection. He didn't do it. He gave the auditors the report so late. But they still pointed out that your register has a problem, and he took no remedial action. He proceeded to conduct the elections in the way that he desired. What he ended up doing is what my grandmother, Sophia Magambo, calls Nairobi Karafu, pata potea. Nairobi Karafu to me, at the National Tallying Center, it is, and we've averted on our feed of it, the national chairperson of the commission called both Raila Odinga and William Ruto. The whole day, nobody knew who the winner was. Even the commissioners didn't know the results because tallying had stopped. I refer to the affidavit of the 11th respondents. They have confirmed even them, they were concerned. Why has the open display stopped? Why are you not announcing the results per constituency as you were doing before? That is what I'm saying my grandmother calls Nairobi Karafu. And my niece Mimi calls Piki Piki Ponki Pakamielo Disco. Because he called both of them. He called both of them. And he was the only person who knew who the disco would land on. It could have been either of them. It could have been William Ruto, it could have been Raila Odinga. It fell on William Ruto and he says, voila, you are the president. Is that how we intend to choose our national executive? We've reduced it to Mimi's childhood game of Piki Piki Ponki Pakamielo Disco.
Council again.
Yes, my lord.
I did give you brotherly advice. Be careful. That language appears to be alien to this court.
I'll be guided, my lord. I'll be guided. But the main point, so that we don't lose the crux of the point, is that the lack of transparency in the tallying and verification of the results, contrary to Article 10 of our Constitution, completely eroded public confidence in our Constitution.
All right, now moving on, Senior Counsel James Orengo has claimed that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) denied Azimio la Umoja agents access to its servers. Speaking during the hearing at the Supreme Court on Wednesday, Orengo alleged that the officials at the IEBC headquarters at the Anniversary Towers denied them entry on grounds that they needed authorization, despite the Supreme Court issuing express orders a day before. Justice Isaac Lenaola, however, responded by stating that the exercise was ongoing by the time the Apex Court took a lunch break. He, however, promised to follow up on the matter.
Thank you, Justice Lenaola.
My Lady the Chief Justice and members of the court, we are also having difficulties with the orders relating to inspection of the servers. We have been given restricted access only to the result transmission system, and only it has not been granted yet, only to one server, and it is established that the IBC has got 8 servers. We have taken the decision to write formally to the registrar in the hope that the court eventually can resolve this matter as quickly as possible, because we are running out of time. But there's no compliance in terms of the orders that the court gave.
We are aware about that issue. We are following up on the question, and as far as we know, the exercise is continuing. Should there be an issue later in the day or tomorrow morning, we shall receive a report. But as far as we know, by the time we got out of here, The exercise had commenced. There was an agreement on how to access the server that was given, and the issue of cloning is being addressed. So let's leave it for now. Let's report again tomorrow morning. I thank you, CJ. I thank you, Mr. Orengo. We are aware about that issue.
May I, with your very kind permission, Madam Chief Justice,
Now, top lawyers assembled at the Supreme Court on Wednesday as the country's top court commenced a 3-day hearing of the consolidated presidential election petition at its temporary seat at the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi. The hearing got underway a day after the court issued directions on preliminary issues raised by parties during a status conference. The court, presided by Chief Justice Martha Koome, was expected to conclude the hearings on Friday before the 7-judge court retreats to pen a summary ruling over the weekend ahead of the much-awaited verdict on Monday. In their opening remarks on Wednesday, lawyers representing the lead petitioners, Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Martha Karua, challenged William Ruto's declaration as president-elect, saying he failed to attain the 50% plus one threshold set out in the Constitution. The hearing of the presidential petition kicked off at the Supreme Court in Nairobi on Wednesday, with lawyers of the main petitioner Raila Odinga taking to the stage to poke holes into the August 9 polls.
4 p.m. on the 15th, a public statement was made by Juliana Cherera, Irene Massett, Justice Nyangaya, and Francis Wanderi, and I will call them as the 4 commissioners because I won't continue to repeat their names. And in that statement, before the declaration of who he wanted to know was his president, before that declaration, they came out and stated that this election was opaque.
The court has consolidated 7 cases challenging the declaration of Kenya Kwanza Alliance leader William Ruto as the winner of the election. Raila and his running mate Martha Karua are being represented in the hearing by a team of 4 lawyers led by Senior Counsel James Orengo. Senior Counsel James Orengo presented Azimio la Umoja issue on whether the declared president-elect attained 50% plus 1 vote of all the votes cast in accordance with Article 138 sub-Article 4 of the Constitution.
The number of votes cast for each candidate individually, that is the petitioner, the second respondent, the 2 other candidates, that the figure that results is not the figure that was stated in Form 34C. The figure is 14,213,000. That is the first point. And this is important because as we proceed, we are going to demonstrate that the number of voters who took part in the elections and the number of votes cast in the election is indeterminate, is a moving target. It keeps on shifting. And I invite your lordships and my ladies to look at the results as set out in Form 34C, and I equally invite the court to calculate the number of votes
automatic deduction of votes cast for him and Martha Karua in the August 9th polls. Through his legal counsel in the ongoing presidential election petition, James Orengo, Raila submitted that the same number of votes were added to his competitor and president-elect William Ruto. In the first day of the hearing of the petition, Raila's legal team led by Orengo, Senior Counsel Paul Mwangi, Senior Counsel Philip Mulgor, and Julie Soweto laid bare their allegations as alluded in affidavits sworn by their witnesses.
If you look at the evidence that is placed before you in totality, we invite your lordship to come to the conclusion that what happened on the 9th of August this year and the subsequent events that followed on the 15th of August mark a pattern of violations against the Constitution in order to undermine the authority of the sovereign will of the people.
The chairperson and the Commission Secretary and the CEO failed to ensure that due diligence was done on procurement, proofreading, and printing of ballot papers, which is also a process that takes place prior to the general elections.
From the 34As to the 34Bs, there is generated 34C. And 34C is so key that it needs a second check. And who is there to do that checking? No longer the agents at the polling stations. In their place, the Constitution sets the IEBC, the 7 commissioners.
Senior Counsel Philip Murgor expounded further on the issue of whether the technology deployed by the IEBC for the conduct of the 2022 general elections met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results.
It came out that somewhere, somehow, in the current suburb, there was a group of about 50 people who had access to the ICT systems of IBC, whereby they were intercepting results before they were uploaded on the public portal. When that was put out and the responses first came, that suggestion was rubbished. But in further evidence, I will demonstrate to the court that it now turns out that that is probably and most likely what happened and what created this entire mess that is called the election results of the 2020-22 presidential election. There was an illegal, malicious, and unauthorized existence of commission staff who are not officially gazetted and mandated to be part of the electoral process, but who had access. Page 15, and one of them I should state now was his personal assistant, whose name I shall provide shortly. Page 15 shows that there was evidence of, this is important, there's evidence of downloading and conversion of the forms from the system and thereafter uploading them with new information.
In addition, lawyer Julie Soweto tackled the issue on whether there was a difference between Forms 34A uploaded on the IEBC public portal and the Forms 34A received at the National Tallying Center and Forms 34A issued to the agents at the polling stations.
What the IEBC set out to procure is not what they procured in the first instance. Therefore, we cannot even match the forms that we have and that have been provided in the election to what they had set out to procure. The figures in the forms have been tampered with and are different. With regards to the results for the first petitioner and the results of the first respondent, William Samoei Ruto. It is in the forms, or the sample of forms, the 41 sample of forms exhibited by Celestine Nyango, that votes have been reduced from the first petitioner and added to the first respondent. We have calculated the total number of votes reduced from the first petitioner and added to the first respondent, and they add up to 2,793 votes. My ladies and my lords, we contend that the figures are important because of the slim margin with which the first respondent won the election or was declared as the winner in the election. And the court, we ask the court to keep a note on that. my ladies and my lords, the difference between the result declared to overcome the 50% plus one threshold is 69,000 votes. 0.49%, which is the margin that the first respondent is said to have overcome the constitutional threshold, is the equivalent of 69,000 votes. And therefore, when we look at the results and the numbers that we will show have been tampered with, either reduced or removed from the first petitioner's votes, we will show that those discrepancies affect the outcome of the election or the result of the election.
Raila and Karua have sought over 20 reliefs, among them nullification of the results announced by Chebukati. They also want IEBC to be directed to tally and verify the results and declare the two of them as president and deputy president-elect. For Maisha Prime, Maisha Television, I'm Bushabi Jr. And still in Supreme Court now, the Supreme Court has said they will only allow scrutiny of ballot papers from 41 polling stations, following demands by various petitioners over the same. Justice Isaac Lenaola made the ruling on Wednesday following a standoff after each of the three petitioners demanded to be allowed to scrutinize ballot papers from a different number of polling stations. According to Lenaola, petitioner Otieno Ogola wanted to be allowed scrutiny in 229 polling stations, Joaquim Boshe 238 stations, and first petitioner Raila Odinga and Martha Karua asked for 517 stations, a request Lenaola found to be impossible to comply with given the strict timelines. Justice Isaac Lenaola made the ruling on Wednesday afternoon following a standoff after each of the three petitioners demanded to be allowed to scrutinize ballot papers from a different number of polling stations. According to Lenaola, petitioner Otieno Ogola wanted to be allowed scrutiny in 229 polling stations, Joaquim Boshe 238 stations, and that made it almost impossible. A request by Lenaola found it impossible to comply with the given strict timelines.
Is whatever you get had one. Yes, correct. That's okay. Not true. If you have it true, you get it wrong.
You have the count 1 to 10, and then you get the highest is 10.
Minus 1.
Minus 1, you get 9. So you add 1.
Yeah, exactly.
So give us direction on the way forward.
Yes, you just I just corrected that number.
Okay.
Actually, it can be captured.
Okay.
Whatever you, yeah. 229. Yes, correct.
So can you not just note that for purposes of your submissions that the numbers? Okay. Please close the box. We need to go to the next box. I hope now it will be faster. Yeah. Yes. It's in the PSD. We give you. Let's give all of you. We'll also capture it. Thank you for reminding us. We say that after polling it was not indicated, but the aperture never changes really. Let's see. No, the aperture. Is it here? Aro, please, do you indicate the aperture? We just need where it is in the PSD. Page 18? Page 18. Yes, thank you. IBC 0010 100. 0010 100. 0010 100. 0010 We don't need to break it. The aperture never... Yeah, so what is the serial number here? It's the same. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's go to the next. We are dealing with... Yes. Please read the serial numbers for purposes of closing this box.
And moving on, Chief Justice Martha Koome broke the Supreme Court protocol to allow activist Okia Omtata to finish his presentation on Wednesday, August 31st. The President of the Supreme Court accorded the Busia Senator-elect 6 more minutes to make his submissions before the Apex Court, going against the set timelines. According to rules released during the pre-trial hearing, Omtata was supposed to deliver his argument before the 7-judge bench in 30 minutes. However, CJ Koome allowed him more time since he was making a PowerPoint presentation. However, Senior Counsel Tom Ojienda was blocked from making his further submissions, with Justice Isaac Lenaola arguing that his time was up. Okia, in his petition, argued that the presidential results released by the Independent